Hi, I'm Sherry Quam Taylor, and you are listening to the Business Behind Fundraising podcast. I'm glad you're with us again this week. Now, today I'm going to talk about this concept of a high ROI revenue generation model. And this is really one of the core principles of my program and the methodology I teach so that organizations can fully fund and fully finance their big mission and visions every single year. Now, last year at the end of the year, I actually read this book, and I have it with me today. It's called The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham. The little byline is avoiding the dumb mistakes that sabotage growth, profits, and business success. I loved it. There were so many nuggets that are, of course, were able to translate into the nonprofits we're running. I took copious notes. I kind of did an email series about it. But there was one thing that I wanted to talk about today. One of the things in the book that I loved was this really long list of vulnerable things that Keith's business did wrong. And he kind of treats them as lessons that he outlined during the week that they lost everything. And for him, it was millions. And some organizations were feeling like they were losing millions in 2020. And so there was one, lots of them resonated with me, but there was one lesson that really stood out to me and frankly made me chuckle a little bit. And that lesson from Keith is, he says, we acted like it was a sin to miss a revenue opportunity. That makes about as much sense as needing to eat everything at the Sunday buffet. Kind of chuckle a little bit. I chuckled because, I kind of missed a good Sunday buffet, or at least a salad bar during these last couple of years when we haven't had that. But that's such a bullseye because so often I hear from fundraising teams that, well, if it makes money, even if it's a little, we've got to do it. It almost feels like we're handcuffed and don't have the ability to say no. You do have the ability to say no. We cannot do everything just because it makes money. So if you're a fundraiser on this call, if you're a CEO who has a team of fundraisers on this call, I want you to really think about asking yourself these questions. If you feel like you're just kind of responding to everybody's ideas, the board has fundraising ideas. Oh, I saw this on a webinar. I see other people doing this, and I think we should do it. I want you to ask these questions. First one, what activities do you need to potentially stop doing that's attracting only low dollar donors or generating low dollars, that's taking too much of your time? Again, you've heard me say on this podcast, low dollar donors are not bad. They're amazing and they're wonderful. But if we're spending all of our time there and we're serving just that part of the donor segment, you're never going to move into more strategic activities and relationship-based funding. Okay, second question. Tracking from that. Are you prioritizing appeals, campaigns, events every year because, well, you just do them every year? I want you to ask yourself if you're being reactive to, well, we just did that last year, and so I guess we've got to do it again this year. Or, what would people think if we canceled that or we didn't do that one activity? It's okay. You know what's best for your business. You know what's making money. You need to be able to track the expenses and the revenue and really make a good decision. Is this a good use of your time? And the third question is, if you stopped doing some of these things, could you start doing more strategic activities that frankly yield more revenue? Could you start making more money? So these are tough decisions. But we've got to not only make these tough decisions when we're doing our annual planning, but really on a day-to-day and week-to-week basis when we're all so busy, and we have to take the moment and the time to pause and reflect and run the numbers to see, should we stop doing that so we could start doing this, which would generate so much more. Now, if you're listening to this and you are the lone fundraiser in the organization, you're thinking, this is too good to be true, Sherry. I feel like I have to do it all. Here's kind of a different angle I want us to think about before I jump into this model I want to talk about today. we have to be making decisions like this. Here's a classic scenario that comes across my desk on a weekly basis. The organization has grown, it might be, $5 million organization where maybe 1.5 of that revenue is coming in from charitable sources, individuals, corporations, foundations. And so there might be a lead development director. And so oftentimes I'll find that one development director is really responsible for so many things, right? The events, the appeals, the marketing and communications too, the newsletter, the managing the graphics of the annual appeal, the social media, the PR. You get the picture. And so I oftentimes, like, part of this revenue model and kind of financing model for the organization, we have to think about is, well, hold on a second here. If that development director stopped doing the Marcom or stopped managing, being the project manager for a lot of the graphics work, or, all the examples, and we outsourced that, and we got an amazing content strategist, writer, somebody who could really, who understands fundraising and can pull that content together. We have to ask ourselves questions like, I don't know, would we pay $5,000 a month for somebody to do that if it meant it would alleviate time or provide opportunities in our development director's schedule? And oh my gosh, year one that we did that, they raised $500,000 more, or they raised $1 million more. And so we have these feel like, oh, we can't do that. We could never do that. We have to do the math and look at that model from a time and dollars perspective. So often when clients make that shift and we release our development directors from everything, they're going to be more productive. They're going to raise more money. And that is a decision I would take all day long. That's a good question to ask. That is a healthy investment to make so that you can help your team be super efficient. So I tell every team that the most precious asset to the organization is your time. It's your fundraisers' times. It's your CEO's time. It's your board's time. And so time is money. And so when I hear the phrase, we need to raise millions more, but we're exhausted, we couldn't fathom of how we would do that, how will I do it all, kind of coming over us immediately, we have to look what's behind that. And I immediately know when the conversation goes down that path, that there's this concept of aligning our hours with dollars is not present in the organization. It's not present in the planning. It's not present in the funding model. And you're always going to be chasing your tail if that's the case in your organization. So I'm going to walk you through the high ROI model that I use with all of my clients. And it was taught to me from mentors, my goodness, 12 years ago. And I still use it today because it's so great. So it's really this pretty easy concept of your top 30 donors. Now, of course, it's going to be plus and minus, and that's okay. But it really helps us set our compass on aligning our hours with dollars. Now, if you have a business background, corporate background, you're probably thinking like this is like the 80-20 rule. You bet it is. Of course it is, right? So when we think of our top 30 donors, I want your top 10 donors to be between 25 and 40% of your revenue. And then I want your top 30 donors to be between 50 and 75% of your revenue. And that leaves, of course, 25%. Now, of course, we don't want to be too heavily dependent, right? Many organizations come to me where we have one giant donor and then kind of the donors fall off, right? It's keeping us from ending up in that situation. Sometimes organizations come to me where it's like we have a gazillion smaller donors. Great. But I don't think they're giving their best gift. And could they move up into that, into one of our larger donors? I think they could. So this is where we have to focus our time and energy. This tells our entire team what they need to focus on. It tells them what pieces on the Sunday buffet they should be doing. It helps them be good decision makers to say, should we stop doing that? Should we take on this opportunity. The other crucial part about a high ROI funding model like this is it helps us see maybe where our activities are not being customized per donor segment. Obviously, the further we go up the pyramid, the more customized, the more exclusive those experiences are. And so, if you have major donors who've given because they heard about you, some scenario, they are never going to move up into their best gift if we haven't really sliced and diced those segments and we aren't creating customized donor experiences for each one of those groups and then each one of those individuals. And this is really where organizations get stuck, where they actually have major donors in their donor pool who are not giving their best gift because they are not aligning their time with a high ROI funding model that really could help them reach or exceed their budgeted need every year. And so when we serve our donors in a way that really is a win-win for them, it's a win, it's a win-win for both of us is what I would say. And so we want to make sure that we're really dialing it in when we're serving that mission, that donor's mission for giving. Now, this model is something that really drives you all year long. It's appropriate and important to look at that model, look at that breakdown I gave you, top 10, next 20, and who potentially could move up, and really look at that. It's okay if there's holes. It's okay. If you're hearing this saying, we don't have major donors, you do. They're in your pool. But we have to be doing the things that attract those donors. Now, nobody does this better than my client, Simone. Nobody. Every year we've worked together, she has reached or exceeded, and I might say blown her goals out of the water. And her I'm saying willingness or her passion to stick to this plan and model, it drives every single hour she does spend fundraising. And what does that mean for her? Well, it means that she has a super strong reserve, about a year's worth of reserve, because she's focused on those large gifts. It means she really has never gotten or kind of jumped in the hamster wheel of events and appeals. If she does an event, it's very intimate, it's very purposeful, it's not a blast type of situation. It's really allowed her to slowly, methodically move every single donor who gives to her into the appropriate spot. And so her annual planning, her quarterly, monthly, weekly cadence, and her activities reflect this high ROI model. And she's blown past goals that she had and dreams that she had from when she started the organization. And it's because of her discipline to the model and not jumping on the bandwagon or the new flashy thing, or so much content that tells us fundraising is easy. We just do this, and the money rains in. She's never bought into that. She's been extremely disciplined about it. If I sold t-shirts, it would say fundraising is discipline. And I'd probably have to put her name on it too. So the tricky part is probably obvious here. Your staff might not know how to do that. Maybe they're awesome at writing grants. They're great at actually planning events. They're great at appeals. They're great at sponsorship packages. All of those things. Great social media, digital marketing. But they've never learned how to create great donor experiences at the top part of the pyramid. They don't know what that looks like. They've never had to know how to do that. And that's where organizations get stuck, because we can talk about the information of the model all day long, but then we actually have to learn how to put one foot in front of the other and make those activities align with our funding model. And so often fundraisers have never had to sit one-on-one with a donor at the top of that pyramid. They've never had to lead them through the financials. They've never had to lead them through a conversation that ends in a one-on-one solicitation. We've depended way too long for our events and appeals to do that. But I want 4 major donors, 4 mid-level donors. It takes more than just storytelling. It takes more than just mission and vision and programs and, in this big dream. We have to be able to pivot into the activities and into the conversations that help donors understand what it looks like to invest in the work that we're all doing. If I'm really honest with you, once my clients start doing this, they see the dollars they've been leaving on the table for years, sometimes millions. So I want you to do one thing for me in 2022. Commit to getting off the fundraising spin cycle. You do not need to eat everything on the buffet. Just because it makes a little bit of money doesn't mean you need to do it. Don't do that anymore. You can fully finance your entire organization if you stay focused, you stay disciplined, and you focus on the business behind the fundraising first. And you can do that with this high ROI model. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Take a minute to like, follow, subscribe. You can even ring the bell and be notified for weekly content. If you are listening to this on audio podcasts, please take a second to leave an Apple review. I'll see you next week.